Welcome back to the Daily Thread.
Welcome.
Day number 2.
Yeah, we survived day number 1.
Which is shocking.
It was Tzom Gedalia. It was a fast day.
Yeah.
I think we were hungry. We were thirsty.
Can you believe that today's Thursday?
No, I have to tell you, I know you want to establish what stories we discussed, but the whole calendar is a mess. I have to tell you.
I don't even know.
I mean, it's just yesterday felt like Monday, and it turned out to be Wednesday. Today's Thursday. You know, we have Erev Shabbos tomorrow. There's going to be, I think, 3 Erev Shabboses, and then like 2, 4, 6 Shabbosim in like the next 3 weeks.
That's a lot.
It's chronologically confusing, I think.
Yeah, a little bit. So, just an update for people. Yes, Miami Boys Choir is still trending. They're still going viral. It's pretty crazy.
The question is why? What is the appeal?
I don't know. I think that there's just stuff going on that's beyond our scope of understanding. Like,
I mean, you were in a choir, right?
Oh, that's not public. That's not public information.
You weren't in the Miami Boys Choir, but
not public.
One of your brothers was in the Miami Boys.
He was, yeah. Yochanan was in the Miami Boys Choir, but it doesn't make any sense.
You were in a choir. You don't want to.
No, I don't. I think I just skipped over that.
We'll block that. We'll block that out.
I think that it's just like every single day. It's insane numbers. You want to know why? I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's just the way it is.
Well, I don't know what it is, but I can tell you internally, having a kid in a choir is big pressure.
Oh, yeah?
You're constantly taking them to rehearsals. Then you're taking them to the shows. And then you got to sit through the shows.
Wow, sounds like a lot.
Oh, it's a lot. And sometimes there's 2 shows in one day.
Well, listen, it might be worth it because your kid might go viral in 30 years from now on TikTok.
Years, so go viral.
One of the big things that happened last night is Aaron Judge.
Yes.
Hit number 61.
And the 3-2. Drilled deep to left field. This could be it. See ya. He's done it. Number 61. He's been chasing history, and now he makes it.
Yes.
I saw a post from Rabbi Shlomo Farhi online that says, "You're following the wrong judge." I'll put the image right over here. You're following the wrong judge, and it shows a jersey with Hashem's name on it, number 1.
Someone said also that there was someone said over Rosh Hashanah that one day the post had on the back page before Rosh Hashanah, it said Judge Watch.
Judge Watch?
Yes.
Interesting.
Also a very, not to be taken lightly.
Very mysterious.
Everything that happens for a reason. Hashgacha Pratis, of course. And we also had the appointment of a king for the first time
we did.
70 years in England. So we had the whole concept of, even though it was a secular king and
very auspicious timing.
Just the whole idea of King Charles and then Aaron Judge. It's not for naught. It's not to be taken lightly.
You growing up, you watched Babe Ruth play?
Watch what?
Babe Ruth.
No, I didn't watch Babe Ruth play. I'm less than 90.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. No, Babe Ruth was retired by the time I was born. But I went to a ball game once I saw Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris.
You saw them play?
I went with my father and my brother, my younger brother Yossi. I was Chalamoid Pesach. I remember that because we took matzah with us, and it made a big mess under the seats in Yankee Stadium. And my father was born in Belarus in 1918. So he came to America in the 1930s. He didn't know anything about baseball, but he knew his 2 younger kids who are baseball fans. So it took us to a baseball game, and then some of the ball players would hit foul balls not too far from us. We were sitting along the third baseline, and foul balls were going over our head. And my father was so intrigued by the balls coming so close that he started rooting out loud, "We want a foul." And we were so embarrassed. Dad, you don't go to a game to root for a foul ball. But he was rooting for a foul ball.
Another video that's been going viral recently, and I'll show it right now. So the video you just saw, it was posted I saw it from Sivan Rechav Meir, and she posts in Hebrew, but the translation is, "Returning to the fields." In the center, you see Dr. Moshe Zaks. He's 94 years old, and it's his 14th time that he kept Shemitah in his life. And all the people from the kibbutz are dancing around him, Kibbutz Shalev. along with their children. They're returning to the land after a year. 14 Shemitahs. It's a lot of Emunah B'tachon to withstand 14 Shemitahs.
Well, if you're Zeicha to Arichas Yamim and you live a long time, you're going to see a few Shemitahs,
It's true.
along with the Daf Yomi cycles,
Yeah.
which are very similar numerically.
Speaking of Daf Yomi, when you were growing up, was Daf Yomi
No,
a thing?
I don't think so. It wasn't a big thing. I don't even think it was talked about that much.
When did it? At one point, did Daf Yomi become like?
I think it started. I remember I went once to a. I once went to a Siyum Hashas. I mean, it was always something. It was always percolating on some level. I went with my father to a place called the Manhattan Center, also for a Siyum Hashas, but it was like, I don't know, 300 people there.
300 people.
Yeah, 300, 400 people maybe. It was in the Manhattan Center. I think it was the building. It's still in Manhattan. It was bought by the Church of Scientology. They owned the building.
Oh,
today.
really?
But every time I go by there, I remember I must have been, 10 years old, and they schlepped me along. And I just remember that that was the Siyum Hashas. I personally, got interested in it 3 cycles ago when someone took me to Madison Square Garden.
2007, 2010.
I don't know when it was. I'm Baruch Hashem going through a Shas for the 3rd time. There's an old story about Daf Yomi. He said to one of the people, Rabbi, I think his name was Meir Shapiro. I saw that a Talmud of his dropped out of the daily daf. So he asked him, how come? He says, Rebbe, the daily daf is not for me. I want to just learn one Masechta. He says, and Rabbi Shapiro said to him, it's better not to know all of Shas than not to know just one Masechta. You get it? So going through Shas, you pick up a lot of stuff each time.
Right.
But it's like a high-speed chase through Torah,
Right, 100%.
But you pick up a lot of stuff.
Something I saw last night that was very nice. This is via MKY WhatsApp.
What is
It
MKY?
was MKY is a platform. It's Mikamche Yisrael.
Mikamche Yisrael, MKY,
Yeah.
Mikamche Yisrael.
So this is a story from Renewal.
Okay.
Today's donor is a father of 3 young children. He came forward for a different patient on Renewal's list who Baruch Hashem got a kidney a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
When Renewal called to see if he would consider donating to someone he never met, he didn't need much time before agreeing to move forward. Being that the hospital requires that kidney donors stop eating from midday the day before surgery, he davened yesterday on Rosh Hashanah at dawn so that he could have his Suda in time.
Mm-hmm.
Came to the hospital yesterday morning with his very supportive wife, with his children are being cared for by their aunts. It's a true family project. So you have somebody, which just really only happens with the Jewish people. On Rosh Hashanah, he couldn't eat because he wanted to donate his kidney the next day. So he davened early to have his Suda early, so he can go ahead and donate his kidney.
Well, I've been around a lot longer than you, and I remember when Renewal was founded.
How much longer?
How much longer than you? About
kidding.
40 years.
Oh, wow.
But I remember being in Mendy Reiner's house when he was discussing.
Start Renewal?
When he started Renewal, he had a friend that needed a kidney, and he took out a small ad in the Jewish press looking for a kidney donor, and people came forward, and that was the catalyst for the whole idea for Renewal. But it's very unique. Like you said, it's very unique.
I think that I once heard that, and I forget where I heard this. I think I once heard that a hospital in New York maybe banned Renewal from operating there because they thought that they were, because the percentage of altruistic kidney donors in the world at large is extremely low, but in the frum world, it's extremely high.
It's very unique. And I remember Mendy Reiner told me a few years ago that a church in South Carolina, I think, invited him down to speak about kidney donations. Of course, it's like a foreign concept in the I wouldn't say the non-Jewish world. I'll say the non-frum world. It's really very rare, a very foreign concept. And he said he made a presentation to this church group down there, and they just couldn't understand it. They couldn't understand why someone would take a healthy person would allow himself to be opened up and have his kidney taken out and transplanted into someone else. But I saw a story in a newspaper after that meeting that explain why that is in the non-Jewish
Why
community.
is that?
And I'm not trying to, be condescending or cast aspersions on anybody, but in the world in general, there's plenty of kidneys around because there's plenty of communities where there's gunshot wounds and stabbings, and unfortunately, people die.
People
as a result
pass
of
away
those
with
things.
good kidneys.
And you could harvest a kidney before a person passes away, and you have a good, healthy kidney.
Interesting.
And you don't have that in the From community, Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
You don't have, I don't think in Maimonides Hospital, which is a whole different story, in Borough Park, you have too many stab wounds coming into the ER.
Yeah.
Yeah, people that ate too much on Yontif, maybe.
Well, luckily, our amazing officials in New York State are trying to take our yeshivas to task because they're not producing a good enough product.
It's a complicated issue.
I don't know if it's that complicated.
It's also addressed in this week's 5 Towns Jewish Times, which I promise not to mention. But it's addressed in a comprehensive way. It's not people on the surface. People look at it as certain yeshivas are trying to deprive their students of basic, fundamental secular education, not allowing them to learn to read or write.
It's not
true.
It's not true at all.
It's really not true. There's not a great emphasis on academia.
Okay.
But the movement in Albany is to try to communicate to the state officials who also can't understand it the same way the people in South Carolina can understand kidney donations, to make people understand that there's something that you acquire in a yeshiva education that is at least equal to what you can get in a secular education.
At the very least.
But that's not. I don't think so far, even though it's being talked about for many years, I don't think they're getting through to them. They don't understand that if you learn Navi, that you're going to know history. If you're going to study Chumash, you're going to know history and Bible study. They don't understand that if you study Gemara, if you're going to study Masechta Eruvin, you're going to know mathematics.
It's just bizarre because the public school system is a complete mess, and to think that we need to, in our yeshiva, to adapt anything close to what's going on in the public schools is just nothing less than bizarre.
Well, listen, public school education is you only hear about the failures. There's many people that excelled going through public school and going on to higher education and doing very well. But of course, we don't hear about those things. We hear about the failures. So you can't say across the board that public school education.
I'm not
is
saying
a disaster.
across the board, but as a whole, I don't think it's private.
I wrote this week that you have to look at the results of an education, not the mechanics and the process of an education. And the results of yeshiva education is that you don't have too many people with long criminal records coming out of yeshiva.
For sure.
You don't have any yeshiva guys pushing anybody off a subway platform.
Nope.
And to
the opposite.
That doesn't mean that everybody went to public school pushes somebody off a
no one's saying that. But
don't misunderstand that.
But to the opposite, step into any hospital, step into any big law firm, step into any big company. How many from Jews from the yeshiva system are sitting there and running these companies and making this difference?
You know how many going back to the end of World War II when Jews were escaping Europe, and those who survived the Holocaust went to places like Kapparot and Cancun, and they went to Cuba, and they went to countries, and then their real aspiration was to get to America, because
right.
That's where the Jewish community was evolving. And these governments, if you read the history of these governments, try to convince the Jews to stay. It was a loss for them when the Jew. It was what they call. They were draining the brain power of the country when the Jews left. Little islands like Curacao or Cancun, or in Cuba.
Plenty of us go back to Cancun now.
What?
Well, Cancun gets
for Pesach you go to Cancun usually, or for Sukkos.
There is a tweet that I saw. And I found it to be an interesting topic. It's tweeted by Volozhin and Kropotkin. I don't know. I can't attest for this Twitter page, but the person wrote, "My favorite topic is," and I quote, "amazing stuff we don't and can't know about history. What's your favorite thing that we'll likely never know about history?"
Well, how could you, if you don't know about it? How could you? If you don't know about it, then could you decide which is your favorite thing that you don't know?
Well, there are certain things that we know we don't know.
What's the favorite thing that you don't know?
What's you don't understand the topic? There's for example, there's over 600,000 Jews, maybe even millions of Jews that left Mitzrayim. We know that we won't know all of them. So someone might say, hey, one of the most favorite things that we'll likely never know is who those people were, what they did on a daily basis.
Well, during that period of time?
Who they were. There's millions of people that left.
Yeah, I think about that.
So
sometimes.
do you have a story in history that you don't know?
Well, similar to that is, of course, I guess you could say during a number of periods in history, specifically more recently in modern history, the Holocaust, where how people survived.
Mm-hmm.
Each story of a survivor is a tremendous drama unto itself, I think.
Right.
I've met people.
Saying we only know so much about it.
I met people that are on the train to Auschwitz, and as 18, 19-year-olds jumped off a train, and because of that, today they have 100 children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and built huge businesses.
Right.
So you never know which direction life is going to take you. You have to be God to be able to understand the complexity of the world. And we spend our whole lives, I think, trying to understand and grasp things instead of reconciling ourselves to the fact that it's not understandable.
Right. Today also is the 81st anniversary of the Babyn Yar massacre.
Babyn Yar.
1941.
Yeah, Ukraine, actually.
Ukraine.
Right.
It's been 81 years.
That's a complex issue. Also, especially in today's in
the Nazi
today's
forces
context.
killed nearly 35,000 Jews
in one day
near the Ukrainian city of Kiev,
days.
over 48 hours.
Yeah, 2 days. Very complicated, especially we view it from a current events context with Ukraine so much in the news. It was also, like we said at the very beginning of this program, we talked about how nothing happens coincidentally.
Right.
You have a Jewish president, in Ukraine, Zelensky, of course. He's married to a non-Jewish woman. He said in the past that his children have been baptized. And then he said early on in the war with Russia, he said something to the effect that he thinks Israel should be more supportive. And he recently criticized Israel for not being more supportive of Ukraine. And Israeli officials said very early on in the war, said, Israel's support for Zelensky is not because you're a Jew, it's because we're Jewish. And that's why Israel would support Ukraine. And of course, there was a huge effort that was organized by a number of organizations to get the Jews out of Ukraine. There was like 300,000 Jews living in Ukraine at the start of the war back in last February. What was your question?
No, just 81 years since that massacre.
Babyn Yar massacre, it's unfathomable. After all these years, it's impossible to grasp what life was like then. But it's just something it breaks your heart every time you hear about it, and there's just no way to be able to comprehend and grasp the nature of that experience and what it is to have suffered through that or experienced something like that.
Something that it's this time of year, and there's always a debate about when this happens. It's Kapparot time, and you'll stumble upon in Crown Heights and Borough Park and parts of Brooklyn,
right here in Far Rockaway,
parts as well, where you have chickens being swung over the head,
right,
and then across the aisle you'll have people protesting for the rights of the chickens.
Well, I don't know. Do you have protesters in Borough Park and Crown Heights?
I think so.
I know we had an ad in the paper a couple of years ago protesting the cruelty to the chickens.
You printed that ad?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. A part of me believes in the freedom to be able to express yourself in a responsible and intelligent way, and people should be able to see things and read things that they don't agree with, and just park it wherever it has to be parked. This idea, which we could talk about on another day, of suppressing things is what's got America today in trouble, because there's a lot of suppression and censorship going on. I'm not saying that everything goes. That's the flip side of that. I'm saying, but if someone has an objection to Kapparot, which on the surface anyway, looks pretty cruel, I got to tell you. I've seen them shuck chickens.
I mean, there's many mitzvahs that, Shluch HaKhan doesn't seem cruel.
No, but it doesn't require you to kill the chicken. Kill
You're
the mother.
separating a baby from its mother for their whole life.
Yeah, but you don't have to slit its throat.
What?
My father.
One would argue that slitting the throat is an easier out.
That's easier. Okay.
No, it's a pain-free out for the
Well, I
chicken
want
as
you to
opposed to separating a bird from its
I
eggs.
had an uncle who was a butcher, and my father once brought home chickens to the house.
To do kapparos.
So they get kapparos in the house, and like 3 or 4 chickens. He put them in the basement overnight, and they all died of natural causes.
Oh my gosh.
So, unfortunately, they never got to die. Al Kiddush Hashem.
What a disaster.
They just. I don't know. I guess it was too hot downstairs.
Oh my
Maybe
goodness.
the boiler was on. I don't know what it was.
You know what? I wonder what percentage of the Frum Jews, in America at least, do kapara. So the chicken versus doing it with money.
Well, I went yesterday to this parking lot in Inwood where they have
They're doing
this
chickens.
bingo,
Yeah.
this bingo parking lot where bingo's going to be one day, and it just started around noon yesterday. And a woman took a chicken. A woman takes a female chicken,
Mm-hmm.
and a man takes a male chicken, and they swing it over the head and they say "Zachalad Felsi," blah blah blah, or whatever it says, and whatever it says. Well, that sounds great. And the woman said to me, she's now doing it for the 37th year in a row
With a chicken.
with a chicken. Yeah, she never misses. 37 years with a chicken, and in some places, I think places like Muncie, probably in Williamsburg and Borough Park. They're not going to swing.
It's commonplace.
They're not going to swing a $5 bill over their heads.
So where do you think? By the way, I just want to mention that a lot of people, I don't want to say took offense, but they were incredulous with your claim that the Five Towns is an anchor, is one of the number one from communities, anchor communities in the world. People were up in arms about that.
Okay, but so let me defend myself. Can I defend myself?
Be my guest. You didn't mention Lakewood. You didn't mention Muncie. You just went Five Towns, the number one anchor from community in the world.
The Five Towns is very cosmopolitan. I always like to say, having lived here for 30 years, that in terms of the Frum community, you have 100 shades of orthodoxy in the Five Towns. 100 different types of orthodoxy in the Five Towns.
You said
you don't
world.
have that in Lakewood.
Of course you do.
You don't have 100 types of orthodoxy.
You don't have 100 types here either.
You do.
There's 3-4 types.
So, no. There's all kinds of different shades of orthodoxy, and what they subscribe to, and what they believe, and
that makes something an anchor. I don't know.
Yes,
I don't think so.
It makes it a.
When you talk about anchor, you need to talk about population. You need to talk Lakewood is significantly bigger. Brooklyn is significantly bigger.
But it's monolithic.
But what about like you said, the world. I would argue. I'm sure Panama. Panama has a more of a larger Jewish community than.
No, I don't think so. I don't know the population of Panama, but I think that
Panama Jews.
I think in the Five Towns today there are about 50,000 Jews living in the Five Towns today.
50,000 families or Jews?
50,000 people, about 10,000, 12,000 families. I think Panama is 15,000 Jews.
It says today Jewish community numbers are some 20,000. Panama is the only country in the world, except for Israel, that has had 2 Jewish presidents in the 20th century.
Well, but I'm maintaining that it's a certain type. It's a certain type that can't coexist with another type. And you have that in Lakewood.
Whoa, I don't know. You're treading in dangerous waters by saying that.
That's what you told me before the program that you wanted me to do.
No, I didn't. I did not say that.
That's what I'm doing.
You say I don't know.
And I think
these are stereotypes that you're mentioning about Lakewood.
The uniqueness of the Five Towns is that it has all this diversity that coexists, and disagree about things. Disagree about kashrus, disagree about the Erev, disagree about
policies,
different things. I don't know what other major things affect everybody. I know kashrus affects everybody. For example, it's just an example. I'm not picking on kashrus. I'm saying it's just an example. But you have this diversity of people that have different opinions about it, and but they adhere to the same thing because they're able to able to coexist. They're able to live side by side, and that's the beauty of that's the challenge of life.
I don't know.
When you hear the calls for Achdus from Gedolei Yisrael, what do you think that means? What do you think Achdus means? Everyone gets along and sings Kumbaya, with their hands around the shoulders of the guy next to him. It doesn't mean that. It means, like, the problem with Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim is that they couldn't get along with one another. They couldn't tolerate the differences that they had. The whole idea of a successful frum community in 2022, the challenge is to be able to disagree with somebody and live side by side with them. And if you're in Hatzalah, you take care of them because they are a Jew and they live in your community. And whatever other services communally, you don't start your own thing in your own little corner and have this kind of kashrus over there and that kind of kashrus over there and this rub over here. And you don't have to agree with what everybody else is doing, but you have to be able to, I believe, live side by side in peace and harmony, and that's why it's an anchor community.
So there's the case. You made the case. People could...
If you want to redefine what the word anchor means, we could do that.
Yeah, people could comment on this video on YouTube, or you could go ahead and email...
What is an anchor?
What?
What's an anchor? An anchor is something that is a foundational object that roots. That it's a root of a community.
I would say that a lot of talent comes out of the 5 towns rabbinically, not to name names because we don't want to leave anybody out, but there's a lot of superstar talent that comes out of the 5 towns.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe that, I would say we could point to that as something that is
something that makes it an anchor community.
Potentially could go towards your discussion. Okay, something that's also being discussed a lot now, that's going on today is Hurricane Ian is wreaking havoc.
So you have a cousin in.
We have a cousin.
We have a cousin in Australia, Yosef Yitzchak and Minna Gordon, who live in Melbourne, and she wrote this morning on our family WhatsApp group. I just spoke to my son, who is a Chabad Shliach in Fort Myers, Florida. He and his wife and 2 very small children hunkered down at home as the Hurricane Ian tried to break in. And someone else wrote, "Are they okay?" And she wrote, "My 2 boys are Baruch Hashem okay. Very heavy winds, but the kids have school today, Baruch Hashem." She said, okay.
I'm sure they're thrilled about that.
Then she wrote the mother of this, the grandmother of these 2 kids, but Baruch Hashem, they're okay. Minimal damage to their house. A 30-foot tree fell on their house, but didn't do damage. It was quite scary during the storm.
A lot of people, in New York are always flirting with the idea of moving down to Florida. What you don't think about, obviously, is moments like hurricane season.
Well, first of all, this is the first major hurricane season, if I'm correct, begins June 1st and ends November 1st.
So you're saying this is the first hurricane?
Really the first.
Hopefully the last.
This was a big one. But it hit the west coast of Florida. Fort Myers is on the west of Florida, so it doesn't hit the major areas that the front community generally gravitates to. We have people in Miami Beach, of course, and in Boca Raton and other places, and Boynton Beach, and there was a lot of rain, but there wasn't this kind of damage. But the eye of the storm hit the west coast of Florida, which was Tampa, St. Petersburg, we mentioned yesterday, and Fort Myers took a big hit, and there's a lot of damage.
Right. So I think that's pretty much the stories that I have on the docket today. Anything else that I missed?
Well, listen, we covered a lot of the news, and the day goes by quickly, and it's a big world, and a lot of things are happening, and we're going to reconvene next time.
Yes. So today's Thursday, believe it or not.
It's Thursday,
September 29th.
Yep.
And we'll be back here Monday morning with a new episode of the Daily Thread. So stay tuned for that. I'm sure a lot happens over the weekend. Hopefully it's only good stuff. Of course, you can go ahead. If you have any things you want to submit, stories that you think we should be talking about, go ahead and email thedailythread@meaningfulminute.org. That's thedailythread@meaningfulminute.org. And feel free to comment on this video, subscribe this podcast on Apple, Spotify. And, I think something that's unique about this that people are mentioning is the generation gap. You grew up with the Brooklyn Dodgers. I'm growing up with
me and you?
Yeah.
Generation gap? Well, yeah.
You grew up Ebbets Field was near your house.
Ebbets Field was at the end already, But
so that was
I do remember when I was like 2 or 3 years old, I remember the sky being illuminated from the night games.
Really?
About 5-6 blocks from my house. Ebbets Field was on Montgomery
Growing up
Street.
in Crown Heights is
was a happening place. It's still a happening place.
Very much is.
Crown Heights is not. The Rebbe once explained that Crown Heights is not something. It's just an incidental name. It's crown, which is the highest level of a king or a queen. It's crown, and the heights is a peak of a mountain. So Crown Heights is not so posh.
What about Flatbush?
What? I don't know. We'll talk about that on Monday.
Alrighty, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Daily Thread. Nachi Gordon here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Larry Gordon here.
And we will see you next time.